There's something weird happening in gaming right now. Oblivion, a game released almost 2 decades ago, is quietly climbing back into the spotlight. Not because it got a flashy new expansion or because it was shoved into another soulless remaster package, but because players are finally waking up to something that's been buried under years of marketing and monetization. Bethesda used to be good at this. Across Reddit, YouTube, and every dusty old game forum still standing, players are realizing that Oblivion wasn't just pretty good for its time. It was, and clearly still is, a cornerstone of the RPG genre. The kind of game that trusted players to build their own story instead of railroading them into one. The kind of game that made Bethesda a household name in the first place. And while everyone's busy marveling at how good Oblivion feels compared to modern games, Bethesda is paying close attention. Because after the embarrassment of Starfield, after years of decisions that alienated their own fans, they need a win. Remastering Oblivion isn't just about selling nostalgia, it's a controlled experiment, a way to rebuild faith, experiment with new tech, and quietly gather feedback for something much bigger, The Elder Scrolls 6. When Starfield launched, it wasn't just another Bethesda release, it was supposed to be their next big leap forward. A new universe, years in the making, backed by all the marketing muscle Microsoft could buy. And on paper, it looked like a safe bet. A galaxy full of planets, crafting, shipbuilding, faction quests, more dialogue than Skyrim and Fallout 4 combined. But when the game finally hit players' hands, the cracks weren't just visible, they were gaping. Underneath the size and the spectacle, Starfield revealed exactly how far Bethesda had drifted from what made them great. The worlds felt empty, the systems felt shallow, choices barely mattered, and the RPG mechanics were mostly surface-level distractions covering up a hollow core. It wasn't a catastrophe, but it was something far worse for a studio like Bethesda. It was forgettable. For the first time in decades, Bethesda had to face a reality they hadn't prepared for. Players no longer trusted them to deliver the kind of game they used to build without even trying. And that's when Oblivion Remastered entered the picture, not just as a reminder of the past, but as a roadmap for the future, a way to show players and themselves that they still knew how to build a world worth living in, if they're willing to learn from their own mistakes. When players talk about Oblivion today, they're not just talking about the quests or the cities or the janky charm of NPCs with 1,000-yard stares.
I don't know. I think they're right behind me. Prior Maboral is dead.
They're talking about systems. Oblivion wasn't just a fantasy playground. It was a true role-playing game. You built a class, you specialized in skills that mattered, you failed at things you weren't good at, you carved a character over time, not by filling out a checklist, but by living in the world and letting it change you. Radiant AI, still rough around the edges, laid the groundwork for a world that felt alive, where NPCs had their own routines and sometimes hilariously broke them. The Dark Brotherhood didn't just hand you a checklist. It dragged you into a living story where actions mattered more than objectives. Oblivion thrived on a balance that modern games keep missing. Enough structure to keep you moving, enough freedom to make you feel like it's your story. And that balance is exactly what Bethesda lost somewhere along the way. Now, as younger gamers discover Oblivion for the first time, and as older gamers return to it after years of chasing bigger but emptier worlds, Bethesda is getting a front row seat to a simple but dangerous truth. Systems matter more than spectacle. And if they're smart, they'll realize Oblivion's strengths aren't just relics of a bygone era. They're the foundation Elder Scrolls 6 needs to survive. If Oblivion feels like a revelation today, it's only because of how far Bethesda drifted from the fundamentals that built their reputation in the first place. This didn't happen overnight. It was a slow bleed, one bad decision at a time, chasing bigger maps instead of deeper systems, designing games for marketing trailers instead of player choice, treating depth as an obstacle instead of a feature. Starfield was just the moment that the dam finally broke. All the shortcuts, all the compromises, all the years of treating players like consumers first and explorers second. It all came due at once. And for the first time in Bethesda's modern history, players didn't just shrug and move on. They started asking the dangerous question, can Bethesda even make the kind of games we remember anymore? That's why this Oblivion resurgence matters. It's not just nostalgia. It's a live demonstration of everything Bethesda used to stand for, and a reminder that players haven't forgotten what that looks like. They haven't outgrown it. They still want this kind of deep experience. Bethesda wouldn't need a redemption story if they had stayed the course. If they hadn't spent years diluting the very systems that made games like Oblivion timeless, they wouldn't be trying to rebuild trust now. They'd still have it. Oblivion Remastered is a second chance they never should have needed, and it's one that they can't afford to waste. If Bethesda is paying attention, and they'd be fools not to, they're already learning from the reaction to Oblivion Remastered. You can already see the early signs. Bethesda isn't rushing out flashy trailers for Elder Scrolls 6. They're staying quiet, building something, testing new tech, and feeling out what the audience is going to react to. Even Starfield, for all of its flaws, showed flickers of an old instinct trying to resurface. A revamped persuasion system that felt closer to Oblivion than anything in Fallout 4, dialogue choices that tried and mostly failed to branch meaningfully, skill trees that hinted at real build variety before falling back on old habits. It wasn't enough, but it was a signal. The design language that built Bethesda's legacy isn't dead, it's just been neglected. Now, with Oblivion back in the conversation, players are handing Bethesda a blueprint, whether the studio realizes it or not. Systems matter more than scope. Worlds that react instead of just exist. Games that trust players to create their own meaning instead of chasing a golden breadcrumb trail. If Bethesda is serious about making Elder Scrolls 6 a true return to form, Oblivion isn't just inspiration. It's the minimum standard players are willing to accept now. Anything less, and the quiet goodwill they've started to rebuild will collapse before the game even ships. I mean, when a 20-year-old game is getting more praise than your new ones, maybe it's time to learn why. It's easy to look at Oblivion Remastered's popularity right now and chalk it up to simple nostalgia. But if you step back, it's bigger than that. The players aren't just chasing memories, they're chasing meaning. They're chasing systems that respect their time, their choices, and their imagination. And whether Bethesda planned it this way or not, the Oblivion Remaster is putting them under a different kind of pressure. Not the pressure to make something bigger, flashier, or more marketable. The pressure to make something real and good again. Something that matters the way Oblivion still does nearly 20 years after its release. Bethesda doesn't need another marketing win. They don't need another billion-dollar tech demo. They need to remember what players are telling them with every replay, every Reddit post, and every stubborn refusal to move on. The past wasn't an accident. It's the blueprint. And this time, it's the only one that matters. That's all for today. You're welcome.